Hello, everyone, and welcome to this latest podcast from the Light Review. And we are going back just about a year. And what a strange year it's been. It was about 11 months ago that Richard and I got together and we were talking about the launch of Spektd and what we were all hoping for. And none of us imagined hoping for the year that we've just had. So, Richard, hello, how are you?
Hello, John. Thanks for having me back after a year, after this tumultuous
Well,
year.
what else could we do? I think I'm still wearing. We've checked with this one. I think I'm still wearing the same shirt. Whether it's been washed or not, I don't know. In the last 11 months, Richard is cunningly disguised by wearing a different black top, but he's got a different sofa, or maybe just a picture of a sofa behind him. I'm not quite sure.
No, this is the real thing, John.
The real thing.
Yeah, authenticity is what it's about.
Good. So authentically, then, Richard, what's happened over the last year for you guys?
Well, quite a year. So yeah, when we were last talking, everything was rosy. Everything in the garden was rosy. Everybody was interested in Spektd. We got our first customers on board. Our really innovating early adopters came on board, and that was great. And then lockdown happened, and it's been curious. If I look back in the year, summer was a difficult time. A lot of companies were furloughing staff. A lot of people didn't know, what does this lockdown mean, etc. So we had to be patient for a period of time. And I have to say, to cut a very long story short, in the autumn time, we also felt that the market was coming back, and that we also looked at restructuring our whole charging model and business model, etc. And we went back to the market with this new charging model, which made a very, shall we say, got rid of a lot of friction for entering into Spektd. And we got a very good uptake, I have to say. And so I would say steady as she goes. We are pleased with where we've got to. Yeah, I think, especially considering the year that's been had with this current pandemic. But I think it's been really, really interesting because you talk to a lot of lighting companies, and a lot of them actually had a pretty good year last year. And so it's a very, very strange situation whereby, I mean, I was talking with the CEO of one company this morning that said the last 12 months they had growth of 25%.
Extraordinary
in revenues and in profit. So, and the construction industry, as we know, is one of the very few, fortunately, is one of the very few industries that has not been completely clobbered. Certainly the signs still seem to be there, that is there any slowdown happening? We know that designers have been extraordinarily busy for the entire period of the lockdown. And just as I say, with manufacturers, barring one or two wobbly months fairly early on, a lot of them have done very well. But it's curious because at the same time, at a time when an industry has been so buoyant, if I can say that, or at least okay, I've never known it at the same time to be so, shall we say, risk averse.
Oh yeah.
And in terms of saying, whoa, we just need to draw everything in. We need to be very careful about what we do. So it's been very curious. And of course, and you might have experienced this as well, John, you come along with something which is new to our industry. It's obviously not new to other industries, of course. You come along with something new, and that just slows everything down a little bit. But what is quite clear is that the noise that we have from the market is stick with it. This is coming good. This is something which the industry absolutely requires. Good. And for me, the really interesting thing is where I'll let you get a word in edgeways in a minute, John.
Not a problem.
What's going to be very interesting for me is what happens to our industry in the next 12 to 24 months. That's when I think that we'll start to feel the effects of COVID. And I don't wish to annoy anybody who may have lost their job from restructuring or been on furlough for a long period of time. I don't want to be disrespectful in that sense. But relatively speaking, our industry, I think, has been very well insulated and protected thus far.
Yeah. I wasn't going to talk about Brexit quite so soon. But it's one of those things that my sense is that sensibly, as you say, companies took their foot off the gas in terms of their spend in non-critical areas, or what they consider to be non-critical areas.
Sure.
Marketing, for example, which is, let's face it, a little bit of a disappointment for both of us, I think, because
Sure.
we need the confidence behind that kind of spend,
especially when what you're offering is something new.
Yeah, because round that boardroom table, the person who is saying we need to get involved with these guys very often is the marketing person who gets it. It gets it.
Yes.
This is something new. We've never seen this before, but what a story it is, and we want to get onto that bandwagon, and we get that. So perhaps the fact that the industry was still standing, because the construction industry was still standing, means that they've been profitable, bless them, because they needed it, and they've kept that turnover up, but they've done that at some cost to individuals.
Yes,
and that's a personal tragedy writ across the industry, whether it's designers or whether it's manufacturers. The whole of the industry has seen a fallout, which then begs a question as to, are there too many companies? Were we a little bit too flabby as an industry?
Well, if I was to tell my wife how many product variants are available to a lighting designer in London, must be tens of millions. Yeah. So anybody who doesn't work in their industry, and you say there are literally tens, maybe even hundreds of millions of different product variants which are available in their industry, somebody from outside the industry would say, how on earth can that possibly be necessary?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. They would say a bulb's a bulb, right? And we know that, of course, that it's not. I think one of the fantastic things about the leadification of our industry has been that it's democratized everything. I think it's really brought down the barriers to entry. I think, and I know that one of your chief concerns, John, is that it's in some quarters, maybe standards and quality of lighting has slipped, etc. Of course, this is also something which is important to us. Is it flabby? Is it a bit overweight? My personal opinion is yes, it probably is. I've thought that for a long time. I personally thought there would be a much bigger shakeout during COVID.
Yes, so did I.
Than there has been thus far. But again, because the industry has been protected because of construction being still buoyant, etc. I actually see this as a little bit of a danger moving forward for our industry. I would worry that we become a little bit complacent. You look at industries all around the world, they are modernizing like crazy. You know, all of these things that they say, 10 years worth of digitalization of businesses have happened within 1 year.
Yeah.
And okay, retail is a very extreme case, etc. But it's the other business-to-business businesses and industries have had this as well. Our industry hasn't. I mean, if you look at the way that our industry is operating now compared to 12 months ago, and even compared to 2, 3, 4 years prior to that, there's been very little change thus far. Now, how long our industry will thrive in those circumstances, or which players will continue to thrive if they don't do the modernizing, and they don't necessarily have to be big modernization, will be very interesting to see moving forward.
Yeah, I feel that there's two things happening here. I think one, we haven't been obliged to change yet.
Correct.
And so we've actually been flying under the radar in our flabby kind of ways, doing some exciting stuff.
Of course.
But when we are picked up on, and people do go, what? Why do you do that? Why do you do? What's the point of this? And all of a sudden, you start to crunch in and realize that all of those variants are not going to be necessary. And some of it's going to be positive, because some of that stuff is going to be you're telling me that we've got all those variants because you can't tell me what you're going to be doing next year because you weren't really sure what you were doing last year. But at the same time, we're talking about things like the circular economy, when in 10 years' time or 20 years' time, you are making an offer where parts can be replaced in a fixture that has actually got no future proofing inside it at all. Now, how's that meant to work?
And I think we're about to segue into another area, but to just sort of complete the point, I think in what I've been saying has been quite hard on manufacturers. I think manufacturers this last 12 months have done an absolutely superb job of keeping the industry and keeping their businesses going.
Yeah.
If you think that a lot of them as well, all of this lockdown happens, big question marks over the future of their businesses, and a lot of them entrepreneurial guys who have built up very successful businesses. All of a sudden, big question mark, what do we do? Furloughing people, restructuring their businesses, only to find that the orders keep coming in, and to keep their businesses going, they are running like crazy to keep their businesses going. So it's no wonder they haven't had time to have conversations about what their business needs to be in 12 months, 24 months, 36 months time. They've just had to deal with what's been in front of them. And I have to say, I really admire the companies that have kept going during these times as well.
Yes, but the one thing we need to remind them is that these are not normal times, because the way that people have been asked to work over the last 12 months cannot be sustained.
So, and we both talk to a lot of people in different companies, and I've sort of seen what I think hasn't happened within the industry and what I think needs to happen with the industry from a kind of global perspective in terms of modernization. What sort of things have you noticed over the last 12 months, John, that you either expected to happen or didn't expect to happen?
Well, nobody expected it to happen.
Well.
Which is an important starting point.
Well, it is, because what's the next thing?
Yeah, I mean, I wrote a piece back in January, I think, last year, saying there's this thing kicking off in China. And at the moment, it's a health crisis, but it may soon turn into an economic crisis. And all I was imagining was that Chinese factories would be closed. We wouldn't be able to get hold of bits and pieces that we need, as opposed to it's over there now, it's going to be with us tomorrow, and we are all going to. So the no one expected that sort of tidal wave of a virus to come through in that way. So there's our starting point. Then it's natural to go, how do we steady the ship? You steady the ship by basically you try to move everything to the bottom that you can. You try and keep it steady. Anything that's floating around on the top, you get rid of. Because the thing is that is a storm that's coming, and you want to be coming out the other end of that storm. But you still need to be going somewhere.
That's right.
Yeah. So in all of that, it's a question of what can you do about new products? There was no Frankfurt. No. Okay. So the first thing that didn't happen was there wasn't a Frankfurt. And for the previous 6 months, I've been talking with manufacturers about the story arc that led from the autumn of 2019 to February 2020, when all would be revealed in the halls of Frankfurt. And it wasn't.
Frankfurt was very interesting, or not interesting, but the build up to it not happening was very interesting in that it was on. It was going to happen. It was going to happen. It was going to happen. Until one manufacturer said that they wouldn't be attending. One particular manufacturer said they wouldn't be. Now, it might be complete coincidence, but my understanding is within the afternoon, it was all cancelled, which was very interesting to me. I was thinking, God, are we all? And so many companies lost money. You know, okay, you might have got your hotel back, you might have whatever, but you'd paid your stand builders, you'd made all of the things you'd paid to them. And I'm thinking, can we really continue operating in an industry where we are beholden to so few decision makers as to whether we... This bit's a bit contentious, John. You might want to edit this bit out, but I don't know. No, or you might want to keep it in.
Anybody who's listening, we know who they are.
But this for me was wow, a real wow moment.
But remember back in the days when we were building shopping centres and huge mega shopping centres, those
Yes.
mega shopping centres still relied upon one or two anchor tenants, without which those developments didn't go ahead.
Yes.
So it's never been any different. If the organisers of an exhibition need to know that in order for that to be successful, there are names that they've got to have there. Never mind the amount of money that those companies bring in to the exhibition organisers through the sheer amount of space they take.
Indeed, yeah.
But the idea that they're not going to be there, and then you've got people going, well, I don't think it's worth going. And it's a global marketplace.
That's right.
That's one of the problems with Frankfurt. It's a global marketplace. It's not a German or a European marketplace.
Yes.
So they probably went as soon as that particular writing was on the wall, then they said, there's no point now because it's just going to collapse down a black hole, because there were manufacturers who were going to say, I don't think we can do it.
Indeed. Absolutely.
I mean, put ourselves back at that time and look, you couldn't look forward because you're going, no one's working. Everybody's stuck at home. We're trying to make things work off a laptop.
Yeah, absolutely.
And now we've got a plan for Frankfurt. And then the question, do we have to plan for Frankfurt? Should we have to plan for Frankfurt? Is it the audience we actually want? We don't know if we're going to be making any money. So why are we talking about spending potentially millions of euros?
Well, I think this is very interesting, and I know we sort of segue now into a conversation.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting to go to this one.
a topic that's close to our hearts, where we're offering something new, and the real question in everybody's mind is, what's the payback? Yeah. And I often say, what was your payback at Frankfurt? Tend to be not very popular if I say that, but if you think to modernize your business, to look at new channels of communication, it's a very, very small investment, especially when you compare it. I mean, we're 1,000th of the cost perhaps of doing something like that. And I think it's very interesting. And I don't want Light and Building Frankfurt to stop. We've all had far too many great memories over the years of like, but the people that live literally in the next street that you only see from one year to the next in Frankfurt, and it's ridiculous. Yeah, but I am really wondering what the future is. I think they're planning to do it in March of next year, so a year from now. Be very interesting to see, outside of my own business interests, what people will be planning to do.
Yes.
Because if you go, you've got to go big. Otherwise, you can't half do it. You can't be half pregnant with something like that. And so it's a massive risk. And then what is the opportunity cost of doing it? What else could you be doing instead?
Yeah, and that's the interesting one. That's where I'm having interesting conversations, because it comes down to the question that, as you said, you are not popular when you ask it. What did you get out of the show? Yeah. Other than you spent an awful lot of money. Yeah. And a lot of people came to see you. Yes, but what did you get out of it? Yes. That was just coming into you. What have you got out of it? Yeah. And people going, well, maybe we could put that money somewhere else. Yes. Maybe if we've got the kind of representation that we believe we've got across our marketplace, we could do an awful lot more with that amount of money and be much more dynamic. And we could then actually look and go, and we got that project, and we got that project, and we got that project, and we got that project. Yeah. So those questions, I think, I know those questions are being asked now. And of course, the fact that we are still locked down, allegedly. Yes. Yes. We have come out of a place where we do not know where we're going. No. So that sort of kicked the old legs from underneath it. Yeah. And there is that sense that it's your local market that matters. Yes. So if you are, I've never really got the hang of this. The UK daughter company of a massive European company spends all their marketing budget to go to Germany, but they're not doing any work in Nottingham or Leeds or Newcastle. Yes. And you go, well, where are your specifiers? Well, they're in Nottingham and they're in Leeds and they're in Newcastle. Yes. They're already struggling to get into C specifiers. Specifies that it was difficult when they were still working in the office. Now they're working at home. It's almost impossible.
You know my background. I've been on both sides of the fence of working locally as also working within the marketing department of a very large German-speaking organization as well. And it is extraordinary. Again, it's change. Some of these companies need a long time to change their mind. Yeah, we've always done Frankfurt, we've always done this, we've always done that. Carry on doing it, of course. There's also big question marks about not doing something like that. You don't go to something like that. People are saying, well, what's wrong with them? Are they in trouble? Why are they not here? Various things like that. I hope, and I'm going to ask you later about what Andy calls COVID keepers, things that you'd like, behaviors that you'd like to keep once COVID's over, that came up over the last year. But I would hope that one of the things that COVID has done is kind of saying it's okay to think differently. People won't judge you based in the same way as a business as they did prior to this. Yeah. This is something which
do you want to ask me about COVID keepers now you've raised it?
Yeah. So, but before I do, just to say, I'd like to see, would hate to see Frankfurt disappear and other things. So, John, what are your COVID keepers?
Well, this is a COVID keeper, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, the big change is exactly this.
Yeah.
And the extraordinary thing here, and okay, I'm going to put my hands up and say, I know there are people who do not like it because they like to be there in the flesh, mano a mano,
Yep.
But this is what I know. In November 2019, was it November, when we were at PLDC, and I was sat around a table with designers from California and Singapore and London and all around the place, and it was fantastic. It was really but at the end of that, once we actually went, see you next time. Maybe next year, maybe in 2 years' time. No, not now, because this is Zoom.
Yeah.
I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Yes.
You got room for a conversation? Yeah. So I've had more conversations with more people further away.
Yes.
Because we can do it with this.
Yes.
Rather than having to think, I've got to get in the car, I've got to drive to an airport, I've got to do this, I've got to do that.
Yeah.
No, we can talk. We can have this kind of conversation, an ordinary conversation. And because we're recording it, everybody else can listen in.
But it's an interesting thing as well, adoption of new technology. This technology is not new. Personally, I've been using it for many years, but people weren't comfortable with it.
No.
Or you felt that you couldn't get the sale by using it in the same way, or whatever it might be. But I think people have now, but when lockdown first happened, it was like, oh God, this thing Zoom, how on earth does it work? Again, it was brief period of time, learn a new technology, bring in a new technology that helps with the communication within your business, won't take you long to master it, and then just see the savings rolling in.
Yeah.
I mean, the amount of money that must have been saved by people not driving around, and I'm not just talking financial, subject very close to your heart and mine, the ecological side of things. I would certainly like to hope that we still continue to derive these carbon savings.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell the story that I'll tell anybody who's sucker enough to listen to me. I had a conversation. I had a conversation a dozen years ago. This is when I was sort of seriously getting into sustainability and what we needed to do to make sustainability work. And I'm talking to a guy, managing director of a company, and I go, how many miles a year do you drive? 40,000 miles.
Yeah.
40,000 miles? Yeah. 40,000 miles. Right, okay, we're in the UK. We know in the UK that you can't do more than 40 miles in an hour on average. That's 1,000 hours, my friend. At 40 miles an hour, 40,000, that's however you cut it, you are spending 1,000 hours of your working time, you, a managing director, sitting on your arse, okay, making the occasional phone call. But doing the things that we have been doing for generations upon generations. There are only 8,760 hours in a year. You spend a third of those asleep. Sometimes you go home. You've got about 2,500 working hours, and you are spending over a third of them and remunerating yourself quite well, I would imagine, because that's the way we've always done it. Why don't you? I said, so why don't you just Skype at the time? Why don't you just Skype them? Oh, they want to see you. They want to see you. And so I now suggested that, however many people there are, just give them all a laptop, fully loaded, and you will save money, hand over fist. And guess what? The 3 hours it took you to get there and the 3 hours it's going to take you to get back for a 1 hour conversation, you've got 6 hours when you can do something else.
Yes.
Now,
but
this year has shown that the fracture in that argument. Yes. Because the one thing I have really wanted to be able to do this year is to get in the car and drive up the motorway for 3 hours.
Yeah, of course, I know. Yeah.
So
we all want what we can't have.
Yeah, but there is a balance to be struck. We're not suggesting that we're going to be caught in lockdown and we can never go out and see anybody ever again.
Yeah.
But we've got designers who are working their socks off, and they cannot spare the time. No. But they can do. They might be able to do this. Yes. 5 minutes, 10 minutes of your time. Can I book you in? Try and get the studio heads to say, use Zoom profitably. Yeah. You need the manufacturers to be able to support your schemes, so use them well.
That's absolutely right. And again, it's just another tool to increase the efficiencies of communicating on the stuff that you don't have to drive all the way up the M1 to do. You start talking about designers there who've been working tremendously hard, and they have, and we know that they have. And I can only imagine that it's been particularly difficult for designers where in a studio, it's all about creativity.
Yeah.
And creativity is all about interacting with people face to face. I would arguably say it's more important than the actual sales process. Do you have any sort of feedback from how creative companies have been handling?
I think that the whole rainbow is there of people doing it very well and people doing it appallingly badly.
Yeah.
The appallingly badly one is simple. You get instructed to do something, and you're told when to deliver it, and then nobody speaks to you again until you deliver it, which is frankly appalling. And then at the other end, you've got the fully engaged setup where trying different ways, being on all the time.
Yes.
So you are constantly in touch with your colleagues, with the other members of the design team. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're talking all the time, but you might just go to, "Oi, Richard, you haven't got a minute, have you?" Yeah. Okay, we can do that. And that seems to work to a degree. I think it also should help with those who go, those who, if they can't see me, they don't think I'm working, which again is an appalling lack of faith by management. And most of the time, I will blame management for this.
Well, it comes from the culture of the organisation, doesn't it?
Yeah, and culture comes from history. And so I got beaten with a stick, and it never did me any harm. All of that stuff, and now we are seeing it's easier to see alternative ways of working, because when I'm talking to you and when you're talking to a manufacturer, when the manufacturer's talking to a designer and the designer's talking to me, we are seeing between us all sorts of different ways. And what we're asking, because I think it's important to remember what it is that we're after, is that we are trying to open the doors again in a very positive way, in a very supportive way, so that the conversations that you're having with manufacturers is about how can Spektd help you to win business.
Yeah.
And you looking in from the outside saying, I see you're doing that way. In our experience, from what we've seen, it might be interesting to do it this way.
For sure.
They don't get that information from anywhere else.
No.
The manufacturer can then go to the designer and go, we've been talking to Richard, and we're starting to understand the way that you need your information to be delivered. Is there anything we can help you? Which might just be aesthetics.
Yeah.
It might be, would you like some pretty pictures to go with the spec?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because if we then sort of come back to something which you asked me at the beginning of the conversation, you said, is the industry a little bit flabby? Are there too many manufacturers? Are we overweight, as it were, as an industry? Well, I think there's some really fantastic innovation that's going on there, and of course it's that competition that drives the innovation. But the question is, how on earth? I mean, if you think that a typical lighting designer says that they will, on their specification, 80 to 90% of their specified manufacturers are probably 50 to 60 manufacturers.
I think, oh, bloody.
How do you keep up to date with what 50 to 60 manufacturers are doing? And how, as one, and by the way, it's actually more than that are fighting over that space. If you're one of those manufacturers, how on earth do you keep everybody up to date with what's going on?
Mm.
I mean, there has to be a much faster way than traditionally has been done. How do you even get them to go to your website?
Yeah, all of those things are an issue, and we're potentially losing a cultural battle, in that it is part of the culture to go to a manufacturer to ask for support. And there is a danger that has finally come uncoupled, because if there's a website and therefore there is a data sheet, what else do you need to know? Which is a horrendous thing to look forward to, because that can only mean a lessening of design imagination, because you only know what you know, and if you're not going out and finding new stuff, then what you know can only do that.
That's right, and that's why with what we're trying to do at Spektd, it's to take away the grunt work, as it's been described, reduce that to a minimum, so people have more time for the engaging conversations. What could we do? How could we do it? Whether that's the design practices talking internally between themselves, or also with manufacturers. I don't know whether it's been a COVID thing, but I have noticed the number of designers recently who are really taking the time out to say how much they value manufacturers within their work. Which now, many of them probably always did. But I have to say, I do hear that more and more, which I think is absolutely terrific.
I think it is great to hear it,
yes.
and I think it's beholden upon people like us, because we're sitting between the stools, or we're sitting between the legs of the stool.
Yes,
if you like.
Yeah.
To assist that process.
Yes, that's right.
Because it's one thing a designer saying, "I really value a manufacturer," but if that manufacturer said, "I can never get in to see them,"
exactly.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. What happened there? Where's how is that disconnect working? Well, maybe we're in the fortunate position to be able to look down from our own personal Olympus and go, "Have you noticed that you're doing it like that? And it might help if you did it like that instead."
Yeah.
You go, "Ooh, can we do that?" Well, I think you probably can.
Yeah.
So that's kind of I feel where we are. We are part of the. We're part of the grease that makes the machine go around more smoothly, I hope.
Exactly. That's what I couldn't have put it better. That's what we are here.
You would never have put it like that. You would have found such a much more elegant metaphor.
Yeah. Probably something that nobody would have understood.
The grease in the machine.
Every machine needs a bit of grease, John.
But that's what we do, isn't it? I think that's the whole thing. We are, hopefully we are honest brokers in the way that it works. I say to the people who are looking to come into the light review and provide the kind of content on good lighting that we're looking for, that don't be surprised if you find you're rubbing shoulders with some of your toughest competitors.
Yeah.
Because that's how the game works.
Yeah.
Because if as far as I'm concerned, if you're standing there and your main competitor is there, what that says to me is that you're both doing a damn good job.
Yeah.
But the people you're losing business to will never be on the light review and will never be in Spect.
Correct. It's very interesting that a lot of the conversations that we have with people is about how do we know that everybody's data in there is accurate and things like that.
Yeah.
And I completely get it. And that's why, you know, also the work that you're doing is very important for us also at Spect, because it's making everybody think at that level, and making sure it's first and foremost in people's minds.
That's the thing, and you know, neither of us are police people.
Correct.
We're not in a position to go, oi,
Yeah.
I've got a warrant and I'm coming in whether you like it or not.
Yes.
We let the LIA do things like that.
We do, but it's also not in our interests to allow people that we suspect are not playing by the rules to participate on our platforms.
Yeah, quite. Yeah, and it might be tough. But I think, well, this is going to sound a little bit heavy in it for our gorgeous audience out there. It's better for us to say no to somebody.
Yeah, indeed. I assume you have as well.
Yeah. The invitation does not go out.
No.
And why? Because there isn't enough out there to give us confidence.
Yeah.
And the one thing that we have to give is confidence in the marketplace. I mean, we have been, I'm sure you've been watching the fallout from the Grenfell inquiry.
Indeed.
And what's happening with the cladding manufacturers. And that is so depressing.
Yes,
and so disheartening that when we say it's all down to the paperwork and the documentation and the testing, and then you go, except it wasn't, was it? Because they cheated the whole thing.
Yeah.
Where does that leave us?
It's very, very sobering.
Yeah.
The sort of the accounts of what really went on in the company.
Yeah.
Very, very, very sobering. And, you know, it was a case of, well, yeah, but nobody ever got caught before. You know, it's like the only crime is getting caught.
Yes. And there's, oh, blimey, if there is any one single phrase that sums up where the construction industry has been, very possibly still is that we never got caught.
Correct. Yeah.
And happily, in most cases, nobody died.
Indeed.
So there's the gamble.
Yes.
There's the gamble, my friends.
Yeah.
You can put all the crap out there you like. The gamble is on the throw of that dice. Does anybody die?
Yeah. So let's cheer us up a bit. John, have you got any more COVID keepers?
Have I got any more COVID?
I mean, I think it's interesting because I'm looking at behaviour. You know, you've always been very the focus has always been on from an ecological and sustainability perspective on technology. And the question is, what other behaviours, other than maybe there aren't any other behaviours, do you think we have the opportunity with having had COVID for us as an industry to?
Oh, I think there's all kinds of directions that this one can fly out on. There are those who are saying that the COVID lockdown experience, moving everything online, moving away from physical travel, dropping air miles and dropping road miles is very good, and that's a pattern for the future. And there's the other side that goes, as soon as we can get back, the better it'll be.
It is interesting, isn't it? I was reflecting on this over the weekend. There seem to be two camps of people: the people that can't wait to get back to normal, and the people that are embracing what they expect to be a new normal.
Yes,
and it's very, very different. It was also interesting that after I think of the 2008, financial crash, that was supposed to be, things actually didn't really change very much.
No, and it could well be that it took the recovery from some of us still have not recovered from 2008.
Well, indeed.
But what we saw was who recovered from 2008, and it wasn't you and me, but it might have been the people we were banking with, and it might mean that we needed the reprise, the redux of a collapse, in order to go. We're not going to do that again. This time has got to be different. The climate crisis is more acute, far more acute than we were imagining 10 years ago, and far more acute than we believe it to be today.
I agree.
And one of the problems I think we've got is that if you've got people who are saying, we've just had the worst 12 months of our, even if we've been doing business, we've had the worst 12 months of our lives, and you're now asking us to make even more changes. And you can understand when people go, I can't even get my head around what that means.
Yeah.
So we've got lots of conversations around the circular economy.
Yes.
We've got our friends at Ricolite doing their regular webinars. We've got, Ray Maloney's doing his bit, sharing all of those, bringing some fantastic speakers into that.
Right.
We know we've got manufacturers who are promoting the circular economy in very positive ways, and companies who you would never expect to be occupying that space are occupying it, which is then forcing their competitors to go, do we need to do that?
Yeah. It's funny, isn't it? This thing about who are the people that take things on board. We've noticed that the innovators in the industry that we see, based on the nature of the conversations that we're having, whether they join us or not, you see a real sort of divide. People that don't want anything to change, and it's companies that are forcing various issues, whether it's modernizing, digitalizing, taking the lead in really important issues moving forward. It's not who you would have expected it to be in the past, which is fantastic.
Yes, yeah, and it's great. I mean, just to name two, we haven't named a single company so far, but just to name two companies in a marketplace where you would not expect this to have happened.
Yeah.
Dextra were the first ones out of the trap with their Dex Rico.
Yeah.
Pulling all those old fixtures out of ceilings, taking them back to Gillingham, breaking them up, and then making money out of the waste product.
Sure.
And now in the same sector, we've got Whitecroft, who are the first. They're doing cradle to cradle on their product, which is extraordinary. And this is in the commodity end of the business. Tens of thousands of luminaires going out.
Yes.
But in a marketplace where it is driven by cost. And these are guys who are going, well, maybe it's not entirely driven by cost.
Correct.
Maybe there's something else going in here. And maybe this is something that I'm not going to put this on your shoulders, Richard. I wouldn't dare. But in terms of what we mean by performance, that at the moment, as far as Spektd is concerned, that's photometric performance.
Yeah.
Someday, someone will say we need to know what the environmental performance of these fixtures is.
And we can't wait for that to bring that in. Yeah. This for us it would be a luxury problem.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, quite. And the argument I've been putting forward for some while on this one, and maybe this is one of the again below the line COVID keepers as to what happens next, is that we are not on our own. We think that lighting designers drive specification, and to a degree that's true. But what really drives the specification is the project brief that comes from the client and the architect.
Yes.
And when they come back and say, this is going to be a BREEAM project, this is going to be a wellness project, this is going to be a zero carbon project, and you, my friends, need to be part of that. So, Mr. and Mrs. Lighting Manufacturers UK, what have you got? And if you can't prove it, we'll go and talk to them over there. And I think that if there's going to be any motivator to start looking seriously at the way things are happening, it's going to be that one. Because designers, and I've had designers say to manufacturers when we've had sort of three-cornered conversations in private about stuff, I can't specify you until you can give me that.
Yeah. Yeah,
really?
For sure.
Absolutely right. No point in even having a conversation unless you can give me that. I can't talk to you.
Yeah.
And the climate crisis and COP26 and all of those things, it's heading our way. And the RIBA is doing what it can to promote its zero carbon program, and so are things like the RICS is out there. The major builders are out there. The people who aren't out there particularly are the clients. It seems to be the clients who are dragging their feet.
Yes.
Because they're just seeing increased cost on building, even though we're promoting cheaper cost over life.
Yes, but I guess it's also at a time particularly where they don't know what sort of buildings they're supposed to need.
Doesn't help, does it?
5 to 10 years' time. But, yeah.
When a building could be an office, or maybe it could be a school,
yes.
or maybe it might be a hospital.
Yeah.
Because from here on in, the jury is seriously out on what society is going to look like in 5, 10, 15, 20 years' time.
Absolutely. I think the idea of flexibility is incredibly important, and I just hope that it's broader than lighting, but the whole design thinking, whether it's the true work of architects to improve people's lives by thinking ahead and thinking about flexibility and how spaces could be, like thinking about what the Beaubourg Pompidou was back in the early 70s in a way. Well, it could be this, you can move this, whatever. I really hope that COVID gives us a chance to elevate their influence once again.
Yeah.
Because it's still too few and far between the amount of times where they can bring that design thinking in with clients.
Yeah, and we have to remember that we are asking for such monumental change in a mindset.
We are.
That we really can't expect it all to happen overnight. It's all happening too slowly.
Do you ever get really, and you might not want to answer this, do you ever sort of sit there thinking or stand there thinking, what is it that these guys just don't get? The house is on fire. The Titanic's sinking. We're rearranging the deck chairs.
Yeah, I mean, well, here's me. Okay, at my advanced age, I've got we've got no kids. The generational line finishes with me, as far as my family is concerned. And what have I got left? 20 years, if I'm lucky. So there's one side of me occasionally says, well, bugger it. Why should I care?
Yep.
Not my problem. And which is not very clever, really, to be perfectly honest. But
well, it's not. But that is an attitude that a lot of people are taking.
Well, yeah, but an awful lot of people who are taking that attitude have got kids, and they've got grandkids.
Yeah. And
they're the kind of people saying, if anybody touches my child, I'll kill him. Well, look in the mirror and shoot yourself in the head, because you are the problem.
Yeah.
And I think that's where this argument is in crazy land.
Yes.
And it's in crazy land because, as the psychologists tell us, sometimes you just can't grasp it.
It's so enormous, it's very difficult to grasp it. But I tell you who do grasp it, and that's the teenagers. My daughter is nearly 17.
Yeah.
It's one of the advantages of COVID and Brexit has been that it's the climate issue has not been on the news 24 hours a day, giving them climate anxiety.
Yeah.
I'm saying it tongue in cheek about it being an advantage, of course, but it's enormous. But
it is. I'm telling you what, I'm going to draw this one to a close, because I suspect we could go on for another hour, and let's not.
I have to let the cat in that's been complaining outside the window for the last half an hour.
I'm going to say one thing, and that is the lyrics of a song have been going round in my head for the last 12 months, and I cannot believe the prescience of it. But I think everybody should go and look again at the lyrics of Times They Are Changing.
They came into my head for a different reason earlier in this conversation.
Oh, go on.
We were talking about how new companies go through the ones that you don't expect. There's a line about the last will be first and the first will be last.
Yeah. At the time, we thought it was just sticking it to the man, and we thought it was smash the system.
Yeah.
But it is almost literal.
I know. It's frightening, isn't it?
Yeah. And admit that the waters around you have grown.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
the real deal. So I think everybody, you know, sort out the lyrics, Google them, print them out, stick them up on the wall, and weep.
Yeah.
For us. Now, that's me, just my little bit of Richard, if you've got one message for your audience, for our audience this afternoon, what would you say to them?
I would say, think about what your business needs to be a resilient business moving forward. This pandemic, who knows? I don't know whether there's going to be another pandemic. I'm not Bill Gates. I don't understand these things. But there will be other black swan moments that come. You know, there isn't a magic money tree. It seems as though there has been, but there hasn't. Things are going to change. Things at some moment will have to contract. Make sure you have a resilient business. The way that you have a resilient business is by modernizing now. Look at digitalization. Make sure you've got a lean operation, because if you have that, if you're working as efficiently as possible and you're looking at new ways and helping support new ways of doing business, you will not be the first that in the future is last.
Okay.
You know,
and all I'm going to say is what he said.
So that's good night from him.
And it's good night from him. Yeah. Thanks everyone. If you've managed to stay the pace of this conversation, bless you for that.
Yes.
And this conversation is probably going to turn into an annual event.
I hope so.
I mean, obviously I'll be talking to him in between the times, but
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
we might broadcast this as our annual Light Review Spect review of the nation. Richard, thanks for your time.
Thank you, John. Thanks everybody for listening.
Cheers. Bye all.
All the best. Bye.